What's up? It's been a while since I've done one of these breakdowns, but a few of you guys in the Discord requested that I go over Promises, which is one of the singles from my latest EP, Signals, which came out on Monster Cat. And this one was a very, very last minute thing because I had the EP planned and one of the songs, which is still not out, couldn't be on that EP, just due to timing reasons and stuff. So I was like, what do I have laying around that I can finish within about 24 hours that can make it onto the EP? And this was Promises. And this idea started from me just sat on a mate's couch and putting these piano chords in, which I then decided to flip into this like French touch, Justice-y, Daft Punk type thing. So let me find quickly that original sample for you guys, and I'll show you how we got from that to Promises. So here are these chords. Very dark, very eerie and mysterious. Some bass, some claps, and like some atmospheres. Okay, so what I did, I literally just dragged this audio into Serato and chopped up some like key points here on the pads, pitched it up one semitone, synced it with the correct BPM, which I just put it at like 122, housey, you know, and I came up with these chops initially. Some compression, OTT and decimal, just trying to kind of emulate what those old like SP1200s would have kind of sounded like. So I then chopped that up and just like bounced it out to audio. It's just easier to work that way, I think. Bunch of trial and error and you end up with this. Just picking out the best parts, the best like slices that sound good on their own. And then as you can see here, I've like got different slices on individual channels just because I want to process them slightly differently, you know. So the main kind of, I guess, rhythm and melody of the sample is coming from these. So if I just take off, like, get rid of that. If I take off all of this processing, it's pretty boring. So again, it's the compression, the OTT and the decimal. Fresh Air, which is kind of like, which is a really cool plugin by Slate Digital. I'm only adding like 6%, but it's very subtle, but you can kind of hear it. More bit crush, sidechain, bit of EQ, bit more EQ, just getting rid of those like nasty resonances. And that's that. And then these down here, some of these intertwine with the bass part. So I'm not necessarily getting rid of the low end. And that's how you, like this micro sampling here is kind of how you get that proper like French-esque sound. So now I wanted to add a bass. So I just added, which is kind of rare for me to do this, I just really added a sub bass. I didn't think it needed much of like a characteristic type bass. Some like slaps as well, mostly like ghost notes, and then more on the bass in the second half of the drop. You have this vocoder come in. And that is literally me just going like bow into this vocoder and like playing it really, really low octave to get that kind of growl. Okay, next up, we've got the drums, which are taking up an absolute ton of channels. And all the drums together sound like this. Oh, who the fuck is this guy, man? Do we answer it or not? No. So I started with this Oliver loop, which without any processing sounds like this. It just kind of fit the vibe of the song really well, but I just wanted some like punchier kicks and snares. So I used this kick that I use like in basically every song. Took the high end from that, took the low end from another one, and that with the drum loop sounds like this. And then I took this snare from my song Brand New Phone, which is a really like snappy, it has like a really snappy attack to it, which I accentuated even more by sidechaining it to the kick. Not 100%, but like 77%. And that just allows that initial like clap transient to poke through, and then as soon as the kick hits, the rest of the snare ducks behind it. So you can essentially make your snare even louder than it should be. You can kind of hear that poking through. I layered like a tambourine one shot on the kick, another fat snare, some hats, and then just kept layering these loops and stuff in. So that's like the bare bones of the drop, and like pretty much what I started the song with. Once I had that, I was pretty happy. We were missing like a vocal for sure, or like a top line element, and that's when I found this sample which worked really well. Promise Keeper. Just like a typical like soul kind of vibe. Pitch down, one semitone, just fit the track like perfectly. I was like, I'm not even going to try and find another vocal because it just works. But the one thing it was missing was like something for the verses, something's a bit more memorable and listenable, I guess. This is more of like a hooky type thing. So that's when I wrote this vocoder line. I keep on for you night and day. Let your worries fade away. You don't need them. I keep on for you night and day. Keep your promises. I keep on keeping. It was kind of easy to write. It was very quick because I already had like the theme of promises from that original sample. And to get this kind of tone, you really have to like... The raw sound that goes into the vocoder sounds horrific. I'm putting on like a French accent to kind of give it a Daft Punk vibe. And you have to be really loud, really nasally. Otherwise it just sounds dull. But coming out the other end, it sounds pretty good. This kind of main vocoder line is going through that again. That Volf compressor and a bit of OTT. This is just the consonants. Just to kind of bring them out in the song, especially like in the drop. It's kind of hard to hear those consonants from a vocoder. With no processing, it kind of sounds like this. It's still pretty good, but it's just amongst all of the other elements, it's very hard to hear. Gem Dopamine's like bringing out a lot of sibilance. It's kind of, I love this plugin so much. Fresh Air again, a little bit more this time. Just trying to compete with those heavily compressed pianos and the drums and stuff. Delay. This is just a slap delay to give it a bit of space. Bit of EQ. Bit crusher. Reverb. EQ. Keep on keeping. So it's just like a super spacey delay reverb thing going on there. Just gain staging it there and a bit of sidechain, and that's it for the vocoder really. I almost forgot this as well, which is the chords being sung into a vocoder. I keep them for you night and day. And that just layers really nicely in the verses with the lead line. I keep them for you night and day. And then even more fun is the second verse. So you get this here. I keep them for you night and day. Just a super dry version. And then you have the bass. Oh yeah. Oh. It's literally just me going, oh yeah. Playing the, again, same as in the drop, like I'm playing it at a really, really low octave. And these three together sound like this. Oh. I keep on for you night and day. Yeah. It's just funk heaven, isn't it? Also, in the second half of the drop and like the outro of the drop, I don't even know what you would call it, there's these strings that come in. And like in keeping with the whole French like early 2000s theme of this song, these strings here are also sampled. I can't remember where they're from, but it's like a string loop that's been just chopped up into tiny pieces and spliced back together, which is kind of what I did in my song After Hours as well. So with no processing, it sounds like this. There's some dissonances in there as well, but within the track you can't really hear it. Compression, OTT, decimal, reverb, fresh air. It's you can tell I was using like the same plugins everywhere on this song. And then kind of gluing that together, you've got like a held note on the Selena. One of the greatest instruments ever. And then you've got another string here, which is just doing the lower octave. You've also got a little arp that comes in. And at that point as well, like the piano is filtered down as we're going into the second break. Oh, there's also a Rhodes, which is just the stock Logic electric piano. The first verse, like the first breakdown in this song, is super like spaced out, very verby, very atmospheric. These are like all the atmos layers that are happening. I'm just using the original piano sample here, like not chopped up. It's just pitched and like flexed so it is in the right tempo and key, but it's not being chopped up. So you kind of save that like choppy moment and for the drop where it's a little bit more exciting. The drums are like really verbed out as well. As you can see, like it's weird looking back at this because I can tell I was working to a deadline because I was just dragging in old drum stems from projects because I just didn't have much time to work to. There's a live bass and a synth bass. Now, this is one of my favourite parts of the song, I think, is this little breakdown before it goes into this garagey bit, where the chords actually change for a second. And the tempo also slows down, speeds back up. The Rhodes keeps on going, playing the original chords. But then they change here. This lovely like major 9 thing goes minor there. It's just a little breather from the progression that's looping the entire time, and like to kind of evoke that emotion a little bit more, I added in these strings. There's this little guitar. Very cinematic. And then there's this really cool sound which kind of comes in and out, what I call the air leads. So Air are like a French band from the 2000s that make like down-tempo, almost trip-hoppy, jazzy music. Go and check it out. Some of the best stuff ever made, in my opinion. But they always used this like squelchy lead, which sounds like this. Which I can show you how I made that here. So this was made in the ES2, which is like one of my favourite synths. Simply just because I know how to use it and I've used it since I started producing. Like the pitch is slightly being modulated by this LFO down here, which is a square wave, and the rate's pretty high. And that same LFO is also modulating the cutoff, and there's a very high resonance. And at the same time, the cutoff is being automated. And a bit of glide on it, monophonic vibes. All right, this is a fun bit, and it goes into this like garagey breakbeat type thing. These synths are like just playing the chords. Standard like serum patch. We got this one. Retro synth. A sub bass. And then there's this white noise, which is being ring shifted by the sub bass. So this sub bass here is like routed to no output. So you can't hear it, but it's an octave lower than the sub that's playing. And that is modulating this white noise. So it almost sounds like they're being distorted together, but they're not. And you get this like really fluttery kind of sound. And then we've got the vocoders, which we've already spoken about. And then the drums. So this kind of main drum bus here. So I think I made this with... I downloaded a plugin for this, and I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like Amiga Sampler or something like that. And it's like this... It's an emulation of what the old jungle producers used to use to kind of chop up breakbeats. So there's like little reverses and like weird fills going on. Different pitches also. And then just kind of like layering that with your typical like garagey samples really. Hi-hats. Another jungle breakbeat chopped up. The goal was to kind of like glue the main drums together with the glue. Some saturation, like tape saturation, and the Oxford inflator. These kind of extra bits down here which aren't being run through the same drum bus. Just to kind of fill it out, make it feel a bit bigger. And then lastly, mostly just going into this build where the piano is like being really, really filtered. So to get that really like squelchy resonant sound, there's this plugin in Logic called Fuzz Wah. And I think it's this funky fuzz preset. If I mess with this, it's just a great filter. Sounds really vowely, really like human almost. Yeah, and then the second drop is just slightly bigger. It's just got some extra effects in there, some extra drums. But yeah, that's pretty much the song. It was actually a fairly simple arrangement and process because I had such little time. And I think that's kind of one thing I learned from doing this, is that if you give yourself deadlines, you'll just get the song done. There's always going to be those songs that you're never going to finish unless you give yourself a deadline. And for this one, I had to finish it, so I finished it. Otherwise, who knows, that piano loop could have been gathering dust for years until I used it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if there's any breakdowns or videos you want me to do in the future. Big love. Thank you for all the support. Love you guys. Take care.